short term at least. Well, there's also been a lot of discussion this week about the UK following Australia in banning social media for under 16s. The House of Lords passed an amendment to the Children's Wellbeing Bill that called for it. 61 Labour MPs wrote to the Prime Minister urging it, and now the government's starting a consultation into whether it should be introduced. But do the young people who'd be affected by it think it's a good idea?
I think it's a good idea, especially for social media, because I feel like under 16s are exposed to bad stuff and it makes them think it's alright.
Yes and no. It's harmful for younger children, but at the same time everyone in our lives now can really live without social media.
I don't think it's harming anyone. I think it's only harming you if you're using it in the wrong way, which if you are, then it's kind of your fault.
I feel like kids these days just watch their phone too much, and yeah, I just think that it should be limited a bit, but not completely banned.
I think in some cases where social media, I think it can enhance bullying a lot for children, especially cyberbullying. But I think with social media, it's usually a platform for people to talk to each other.
It would instead create a larger problem of social norms as well, because a lot of people have adapted towards using social media, messaging within apps and stuff.
How would you have felt when you were 15 if they'd taken social media away from you?
Probably really upset, I'm not going to lie. Everyone's on their phones every day, so it would have been impactful. I don't think I would have been very happy. That's the only way I talk to my friends.
Do you spend too long on your phone?
Maybe. I think so, yeah. I probably need to cut down on it.
So some very honest opinions there from those 16 and 17-year-olds. And joining us now is Claire Ferneyhoff, who's the co-founder of Smartphone Free Childhood and Generation Focus, which is a campaign for phones to be banned in schools. Claire, thank you for joining us. I think for me the most striking voice that we heard there was the girl who said that's her social life. So if you take away social media, for her, that's her community gone. What would you say to that?
Absolutely, and it was really interesting hearing those teenagers talking about how they have adapted to it. They don't know life without it, and this is how they connect. Absolutely, that is the state of reality. But you have to counter that with the fact that all the stats say that the World Health Organization says that 13 to 17-year-olds are the loneliest generation that have ever lived. So, yes, they are more connected, but at the same time, we have a mental health crisis. We know that social media is correlated strongly with anxiety and depression, self-harm, and the list goes on. So, yes, they don't know life without it, but this is why, as the adults in the room, this is the time to step in. There are times in history when we do need to intervene as a state, and I do think this is the time. We have enough evidence, just because they've got used to it, to connect with friends. We are humans. We are meant to be connecting primarily face to face. That's how our brains have developed. And so, whilst of course at the moment they're online and they're connected that way, there is a different way that is better, that would protect childhood.
Now, you've been campaigning on this subject since your own children were very young. Why did you decide to start the campaign, and what eventually would you like to see?
So yes, we originally set up Smartphone Free Childhood simply because we had daughters. My daughter was 9 at the time. I was looking ahead to the future. I'm a psychologist, and I could see it wasn't going to be good for her, but I didn't want her to be the only one without a smartphone. And I think this is what this comes down to. It's peer pressure. Almost every parent we speak to would rather their child didn't have social media and smartphones. They only do it because they don't want their child to be left out. And we have a collective action problem here. So we know full well we have enough evidence now. We need to protect children. We need to intervene. We need a minimum age for social media of at least 16. And we also, my work with Generation Focus, which is my new schools campaign, is to get phones out of schools as well. Get the smartphones out of the children's hands so that they can focus, interact, enjoy their childhood, because at the heart of this is a business model. They are making money for big tech, essentially. They are working for big tech. That is the business model. That's how the financial transaction works. And it's not benefiting them. And we need to protect them. Childhood is too short for them to be just scrolling and clicking all day long.
Now, not everybody is in favour of a total ban. For example, the NSPCC and the Molly Rose Foundation. And Ian Russell, who's the father of Molly Russell, who took her own life, he now campaigns, as you know, on the dangers of social media. He's not in favour of a total ban. Let's hear what he had to say on Newscast.
The problem with a ban is you're not addressing the source of the problem, the source of the harm. The problem with a ban is that you're penalising children. You're preventing them from growing up in a digital world. Whether we like it or not, we exist in a digital world. We all have to grow up in a digital world, and we have to learn to live in a digital world. A ban stops that happening, and it takes the onus away from the platforms, who in my mind are the culprits here. It takes the onus away from them doing something about the problems that they have caused.
Taking the onus away from the social media platforms. Do you not agree with him?
Absolutely. You know, I have huge sympathy for Ian Russell and his position. And I agree. I would love a world where these social platforms, media platforms, were safe. And that's what the Online Safety Act tried to do. And those campaigners who worked for 10 years to try and make these platforms safe. We've seen very clearly it hasn't worked because there is too much money at play. And even the politicians who were involved in designing the Online Safety Act are now saying this is not working. So yes, in an ideal world, that would work, but we need to go back to the business model. Whilst these platforms are benefiting financially from our children being addicted, they have no incentive to make it safer. And so far, we've seen no evidence, of changing. So whilst I very much sympathise with his position, it just doesn't work. We have to step in now. We've had every single medical college in the country saying this is a public health emergency. These are doctors who are seeing the harms every single day in their clinics, and we need to listen to them. The big tech narrative is feeding through very, very strongly, and we need to separate good common sense from actually what is financially motivated. And the other thing to say is the digital literacy. Absolutely, we're not anti-technology. We live in a digital world. We need to make a distinction between children who are learning to use technology safely on computers, at school, in whatever way that works, and handing them over to these platforms that are exploiting them and manipulating them. They don't need to learn Instagram in order to live in the digital world.
OK, Claire, thank you. Let's bring in Ross and Rachel now. Rachel, 61 Labour MPs have written to the government asking for this consultation. But how would a total ban be enforced?
Well, I think that needs to be looked at as part of the consultation. I mean, obviously, we have seen ways of stopping people accessing social media platforms below a minimum age elsewhere. I think it's really interesting to see what's going on in Australia. And actually, we have the advantage that they've gone early, so we can learn a little bit from what they're doing, see what's working. I think that so much of what's been said is right, but we need to make sure that we get this right, because this isn't going away. This is not just for my children, Ross's children. This is the next generation of children, are people who aren't yet born, are going to be living in this world. So we need to have that generational conversation about not just what's the right age, but all the other safeguards and guardrails we need to put in place so that this technology serves us, not us serving it.
Ross, what to Ian Russell's point that it's penalising children if you take it away from them?
I've got the utmost sympathy for Ian and what he's been through. I think what he said about children not being able to develop digitally, I think what we want to avoid is harmful digital interactions. Rachel mentioned the enforcement. That'll look after itself. I mean, we've got a ban on thefts, don't we? Some thefts still happen, but they happen a lot less than if we didn't have a ban on them.
But isn't there a danger then that children will find other ways to access even more harmful content?
Well, that's the point I was making. Like, maybe they will, maybe they won't, and then we'll deal with that situation when it arises. But we shouldn't let, it'll be difficult to enforce, argue against what is, I think, a good thing to do. I mean, I've got 4 children, and, I've spoken to teachers, and they tell me that the behavioural implications, the amount of time that teachers spend dealing with the fallout of social media interactions just amongst their own pupils is insane. So I think we'd be doing everyone a favour in educational environments if we had a restriction or a ban on under 16 social media use.
Shouldn't your government be putting more pressure on the social media companies to clean up their acts?
Well, I think we're starting to see that, aren't we? And actually, I think there's a combination of, yes, pressure, but also we need to look at the regulation, because we can't always rely on the industry to self-regulate, however much pressure is put on. We need to actually set up what's the expectations. And I think that would be good for parents and young people as well, knowing what's the norm, because I think a really good point was made was about actually what's the norm. People tend to do what is the norm. So if it becomes the norm that young people aren't on social media at the age of 15, then actually we tend to see most people will go that way. So I think there's also that point as well. It's not just about expecting the social media giants to do everything just because, you know, that's the right thing to do. We need to set up society in a way that structures things properly.
So watching closely what happens in Australia, what are your takeaways from what you're seeing there so far?
I've not seen too much of I've not seen much of the evidence. I just wanted to say, though, don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Would we like social media companies and technology companies to solve this at a stroke? Yes, we would. Is it going to happen? No, it's not. So what can we do in the interim to keep our children safe? Because that's what it's about. I'm not in favour of banning things overall.
They do still want to communicate with each other. I think that's the point, isn't it?
Yeah.
Just briefly, Rachel.
But I think one of the things we need to be helping our children with, especially, remember, this is the generation that went through the COVID lockdowns as well, at very pivotal ages, and we've probably all seen young people in our lives or through our work where that's had an impact. We need to help them to interact and have a community. I thought it was incredibly sad that a young person would say all her social media was her community. We need to help them have that community outside of, through the medium of a screen as well.
Okay. Thank you. And Claire, thank you very much for your time. I can see you nodding away through much of that. Claire Fernyhough, thank you. And you can find plenty more about this topic on the BBC News website. There's a page there, and the news